Hello, my name is Alex Borucki, and this is part of Latin American Clips, a conversation with UCI faculty and grad students working on Latin America. Here we are with Professor Viviane Mahieux from the Department of Spanish and Portuguese. She has recently published the edited volume El Moreno, a book on Argentine chronicle and LGBTQ activist María Moreno, co-edited with Claudia Darrigrandi and Mariela Mendes, and with contributions of many scholars. Hello, Viviane, how are you?
Hi, Alex, doing good. Thank you for organizing these clips.
Oh, it's a great way to touch base with people in these times. Now, could you tell us about María Moreno and why you all decided to write a book on the writings of María Moreno, indeed?
Yeah, María Moreno is, I would say that she's right now one of Argentina's most prominent public intellectuals. She has a long trajectory in journalism since the 1980s and in activism also since the 1980s. So she's a prolific writer. She has written novels, she has written essay, and she has written continuously in the Argentinian press for the past few decades. She's also expanded her work into other realms as a term that she has coined, which is partera de otras voces. So a little bit like a doula or birth. She helps give birth to other voices, and she's organized workshops with marginalized groups who are trying to work to get their voices out. So for a while, she organized or helped impulse writing by transvestite population in Argentina in a situation of prostitution. And these groups began a newspaper, a daily newspaper called El Teje. And in El Teje, teje has many meanings. No, teje means to knit, but it also means to gossip and to talk. So El Teje, yeah. So El Teje is a publication that she helped launch. And even though it was short-lived, a lot of these enterprises are always short-lived, she has continued to be very active in promoting writings from others. So she's a fascinating figure because she's omnipresent, she's everywhere. And at the same time, she's very enigmatic and hidden. And in that sense, what's fascinating is that for somebody who has become so active and so important in Argentinian letters, there had been no collected volume on her work, no sustained academic dialogue on her work. So she's had a great impact, but there had been no visibility, let's say, sustained visibility from the academic side. One interesting thing about her is that she's very little known outside of Argentina or outside of the Cono Sur, no? Chile, Argentina, Uruguay. For instance, in Mexico, she's not known at all. And yet she's a fascinating figure at the same level, I would say, as other important chroniclers such as Pedro Lemebel in Chile, who has since passed away, Carlos Monsiváis in Mexico as well. So she's definitely at that same level of impact culturally, socially, politically, and yet she sort of flees the stage. No? A lot of chroniclers are very present in terms of their public performance. She tries not to be. So in that sense, she is an enigmatic figure, and that's what we wanted to capture in that collected volume. We have 15 essays. And in fact, interestingly enough, just to give you an idea of María Moreno's public presence and resistance to being public at once, we had a Zoom presentation. Unfortunately, this is how it goes. We had a Zoom presentation that brought together many of the contributors and some of the public. We invited her to come to the Zoom presentation of the book, and we received absolutely no answer, which was no surprise, except the day of the presentation, we received a long letter explaining why she would not be there, because she didn't want to be there. It would be like going to her own funeral. And yet saying, and perhaps, under some other name, I will be there. So in fact, we had the book presentation, we read her letter, and maybe she was there, maybe not. So that sort of summarizes in many ways the way she plays with the public and the private.
Wow, that's great. And the contributions come from different disciplines as well, and from people working in the US and Latin America.
Yes, we put out a call for papers. So that sort of ensured that we had a wide range of contributions. So we have quite a few scholars who are based in the US, others based in Chile, and others based in Argentina. And we also have a mixture of academic perspectives and writers who reflect on her work from a more personal point of view. So it's a bit of a hybrid book in that sense. And so yes, we had historians, literary scholars, scholars of the press, and in fact we can, the variety of the scholars that we have contributing, in a sense, we try to reflect the diversity of María Moreno's own work. So there are some essays that focus very much from a theoretical perspective on questions of gender and sexuality, others that are focused more on a historical perspective on the contributions to the press, and others, of course, more light, more playful essays that are more personal reflections of her impact on the world of letters in Argentina.
Great, good. And now going to your own work in these very tasking times, I wanted to ask you how the pandemic, La Plaga, has shaped or has affected your writing life or your life in writing.
How has it not? would be a shorter answer. Listen, I work a lot on the history of the press in Mexico, on writers who are also journalists and editors, and I focus a lot specifically for my personal projects right now on the period of the Mexican Revolution and the period immediately following the Mexican Revolution. These are huge projects. There's so much material. That part of what I was able to do or complete before the pandemic struck was another co-edited volume with a colleague from UNAM, from Mexico City, on the cultures of the press in Mexico. So we focused on the cultures of the press in Mexico, again, an interdisciplinary project with many scholars. And we have a forthcoming book with 18 essays from historians, art historians, literary scholars, focusing on the press from the late 19th century to the 1940s in Mexico. So I was able to get that collaborative piece sort of on its way before El COVID struck. And it has actually greatly impacted me in terms of my own writing, which is related to the press and Mexico in the 1920s, because I'm very dependent on archives. And even though I have already completed a substantial amount of archival work that I need, there's still more than I need. And so, of course, archives in Mexico City are closed. I was lucky enough in the fall of 2019 to have a fellowship at the Huntington Library to explore the Lozano papers, which deal with La Prensa y La Opinión, two really important Spanish-speaking newspapers published in San Antonio, Texas, and here in Los Angeles. And I, was able to get started with that research, and then boom, when I thought I'm going to have a little bit more time during the spring quarter, I'm going to have a little bit more time over the summer to come back to the archive, it's closed. So that's, I know that I'm living through that, and I know that a lot of graduate students and a lot of other faculty are living through that. So it makes it difficult to focus on a long-term project for me. I've been able to complete smaller works here and there, essays that I contributed, like an essay on Bolaño, and smaller pieces, but to focus continually on the long-term project with the archives closed, with my daughter in and out of school, or mostly here at home, and also caring for older members of the family, it's difficult. So I do want to put that out there because I know I'm not alone, and sometimes people aren't always willing to talk about it. So it has been tough. Yes, it has been tough, but I hope I'm still optimistic that there is an end in sight.
You know, that answer really resonates with me too, because I don't talk about myself in these things, but I have taken into responsibility smaller, shorter projects within this year, rather than focusing on the big ship meaning as a barco, or the big project. That I would have somewhat put on hold, or do some part with the things that I have, rather than tackling major parts of that, indeed. Yeah, no.
I think it makes sense, and I'm glad you say that, because it's difficult right now with, you have to rethink your classes, reformulate your classes, and with so much uncertainty, keeping your focus on one big objective can be kind of discouraging.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of it's uphill work anyways, but it seems that the hill these days is steeper.
Oh, yeah.
So in a sense, that's the way I've found my way to remain active during this time, is to focus on smaller projects. So it's more rewarding. You feel you completed something instead of wondering really how far you've been able to go. Yeah.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you very much for touching base with us, indeed. And well, I hope.
Well, thank you, Alex, for the invitation. And I'm sorry I was not speaking alone all this time. You hear my dog in the background. As you know, we're at home. This is a pandemic video.
Yes. Okay. Bye bye.
In every respect. Ciao, Alex. Gracias.